What's going on, guys? Welcome to the Angelo Carlos podcast. I'm with my brother Drew here. He's actually my classmate at UCLA Anderson, and he's a team lead licensed marketing at Hulu. He's been there for about 2 years, almost over 2 years, 2.5 years, about 2 years and 8 months now. So super excited to have him on board. I really wanted someone with a great perspective on marketing and working for such a large, amazing company like Hulu. So Drew, welcome to the podcast. How are you doing, my friend?
Doing well, man. Thank you for having me.
Of course, of course. Super excited to have you. Drew is probably one of the best marketers, one of the best people I've met at UCLA. When him and I are together, we're always laughing, always having a great time, and we share that we're both kind of Filipino. So it's always good to see that common background between both of us, and we kind of just got close ever since our first year at UCLA, and we hit it off. So Drew, man, it's an honor having you on board on the pod, my brother. Thank you so much.
Yeah, hyped to be here, man. Angelo is one of my closest friends in the class for sure. So always down for a chat.
All right. Appreciate you, brother. So we're going to just jump right into the podcast. I want to understand a little bit more about you. Where are you from? Where did you go to undergrad? And what was your major?
Yeah, for sure. I'm Drew. I'm from Irvine, California, out in Orange County. I started college at St. Mary's, actually in the Bay. I did 1 year there, and then I transferred and did 2 years at Berkeley, where I graduated. So it was a great time up in the Bay. Go Bears! And my major was in media studies. So not quite a business marketing background, but absolutely something in which we were talking about the media all the time, whether that was TV, whether that was podcasts like this, whether that was movies. So it really helped me start my career.
Yeah. So what made you go to St. Mary's in Moraga and then transfer over to Cal? You're kind of going from a really great private school to like one of the biggest and I guess the best public institution we have here in the U.S. at Cal Berkeley. What made you make that transfer?
Yeah, for sure. I think that St. Mary's for me, a lot of it was I really liked the small school feel to begin with. Coming out of high school, I really liked the idea of having classes with, just 20, 30 people. And that was really great. But I think having done that for a year, I knew that I wanted to, really test myself as best as I could. So there really weren't any bigger tests other than Berkeley. So being able to kind of cross the street, it was only maybe 30 minutes away from St. Mary's at the time. It was really a way for me to really dive right in and test myself against other people that had really big aspirations.
That's pretty cool. And I kind of have a question about that because I actually have some podcast listeners who are asking me about transferring to a different school
Mhm.
after their second, third year or transferring to another UC. Any tips for them on how to transfer to different schools?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that the biggest thing for me was talking to all my prospective schools, counseling admissions departments,
Mm,
right? So I think at the end of the day, every school wants you to come there, right? So they're going to be the best resource as you possibly can. So whether that's talking to you about different test scores, whether it's talking to you about your course load or about the different classes that you can use to transfer there, whereas in my case at Berkeley or UCLA or whatever it is, they'll absolutely try to facilitate the process as best as they can. So big shout out to Roy at UCLA. Big shout out to all the admissions guys at Berkeley too that have really helped me along the way, and I would imagine they would help you guys too.
yeah, that's awesome, man. And it's pretty cool. I guarantee you, man, you're living that Filipino dream where they want you to go to the best UC, and you went to both of them, which is Cal and UCLA. So your parents, and you're working at Hulu Disney. So you, sir, they must be super proud of you.
Some days, man. Some days.
That's awesome. That was like the first thing I kind of realized. I was like, man, this guy is living the Filipino dream. Like, his parents are probably super proud of him.
Hey, man.
uh,
I think part of it too. I've had a really supportive fam along the way, and they're smart people themselves also. So I've had a lot to learn.
that's awesome, my brother. Well, major props to you. Gotta give you your flowers there. I want to jump into your time after Berkeley. So, from my understanding, you graduated Cal Berkeley, and then you went over to a kind of more so on the media side with NBC Universal. Is that correct?
Yeah,
What was
yeah.
that
So
like?
after, yeah, I was in something called the Page program at NBC, which, for any of the listeners that are 30 Rock fans, that's what Kenneth the Page is, and that. So,
Oh, wow.
for this one, being in LA for mine, as opposed to New York, I got to rotate across a bunch of different departments within NBC, which I think that is absolutely what I needed to start my career. So I got to learn a little bit more about marketing, which is where I picked ultimately. But I got to work in digital distribution. I got to work in writing a little bit, like I worked in development and production. I worked with a bunch of different types of shows too. So whether that's something like Uncorked. It was a show on
Yeah,
Esquire,
Uncorked.
or I also worked a little bit on American Ninja Warrior. So it
No
was really
way.
cool to see a wide variety of different types of shows and how they come together.
So what got you into all this? Because we have a friend named Chad, and he was heavy into tech, and he really
Yeah.
wanted to pivot to kind of the movie and entertainment industry. What got you into all this?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think that frankly, I always liked doing creative things growing up,
I could
and
see
I think
that.
that any of my friends that you would talk to, they would confirm too. I liked to write. I liked, doing poetry. I would write scripts with my friends sometimes, and I think it was always in the back of my head to go join a TV studio or a movie studio once I graduated from college. And I think that frankly, being part of the Page program too was just something that you kind of just see on TV for the show at the time for 30 Rock. And I remember thinking, why not? Why not give it a chance? And I think having tested myself against some of the smartest kids that I know at Cal, I figured I would back myself at NBC too. And fortunately enough, they decided to take a chance on me.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, no, I'm glad you kind of pursued your dream. You pursued what you really want to do in life. Did you do anything kind of creative at Cal? Were you part of like the Filipino Cultural Night thing at the UCs, or did you do any kind of like theater of arts type of work there in college?
Yeah, for sure. So, in terms of the Filipino community in college at Cal, I wasn't necessarily part of that, mostly because most of my family is up in the Bay. So, being
Hmm.
part of the Filipino community within the Oakland area, within, I guess, closer to Livermore as well, and talking to the folks there, that was kind of where I touched my culture there. But in terms of the creative stuff, yeah, I worked a little bit within the Daily Cal, like I had a column or two in there.
Oh wow.
I wrote stuff with my friends too, whether it was kind of similar to high school, where I was talking about short stories or just sharing our poetry. And I think you don't think about how fun or important those things are in the time, but ultimately that kind of laid the foundation for what I write from day to day now.
That's so cool, man. That's so cool you mentioned. I didn't know you were part of so many different things at Cal. I had a buddy actually. He kind of blew up on TikTok. His name was Nazar. He was like Mr. Berkeley or Mr. Cal, where he would interview people like Jalen Brown on TikTok when they're on campus. So it's cool to see so many creatives coming out of Cal, especially such a STEM school where everyone's going to the Valley, working on code and all this. And it's good to see you're kind of mixing it up and doing what you're passionate about. Um, I want to jump in now back to kind of like your career. I know we mentioned your stint at Universal. Let's jump into your time at Hulu. From my understanding, your first kind of stint there, you were a sales planner. What was that like at Hulu? And Hulu was
Yeah,
getting big at that time.
yeah, for sure. It's definitely been two different chapters in my life in terms of my times at Hulu. So, in my first stint, as you mentioned, I was a sales planner. So, I was sales adjacent. I wasn't necessarily a salesman, but I was working a lot with some analytics. I was working within media planning. I was working with some of the integrated marketing folks, and it was about planning the sales for my AEs. So, whether that meant working on the actual impressions within the media plans or connecting the dots with the different folks that we had to work in at Hulu, whether that was some of the product guys or any of the data guys. That was kind of my role there. And I think that it was also just a different time for the company too, and that we weren't fully Disney yet. It was still a joint venture across a number of different media companies. So everything that you could think of as to what a startup is at that point, it definitely was that. And I think it was a really fun time in my life to be there. So really grateful for that experience.
Can you give us understanding like those early days at Hulu prior to Disney acquisition? What was that like? Were you working on multiple projects? When you also like regarding compensation, did they give equity kind of like in those early days of Hulu?
They did, yeah, yeah. And I think now, especially compared to now in terms of then, there's a lot
Hmm.
more opportunity for stretch projects during that more startup-y time for Hulu. So, of course, my day job was helping the sales guys, but I also got to dabble in, cultural projects or
Yeah.
event-based projects at Hulu. So, we have a thing called Huluween where it's a
Oh
big
wow.
celebration of our culture at the company. So, being part of that event during that first stint from 2017 to 2019 was really cool. I really think that it helped me build a lot of affinity for the brand and understand the people that I was working with from day to day also. But I think even outside of the cultural stuff, I got to contribute to different sports marketing campaigns, which frankly that didn't have a ton of relevance to my job at the time, but kind of helped me scratch my itch from a sports perspective since I love sports, but also better understand that I wanted to be a marketer in the long term.
That's pretty cool. And for those of you curious, Drew's a huge sports guy. It's usually me and Drew at the Rose Bowl watching UCLA and Dorian Thompson Robinson throw some touchdowns. So and we always just talk about sports whenever we're together. So huge, pretty cool. What kind of sports campaigns did you work on at Hulu during that time?
Yeah, so there are a couple of different smaller soccer campaigns that I worked on, and as you'll know, as my friend, that's like my favorite sport. So being able to
Yep.
contribute to any sort of even small market thing, we're working within mini DMAs, so a couple of ones in the middle of America. That was really fun. Across from that, I'm trying to think of what else we did. I consulted a little bit for some of the brainstorming around some Super Bowl ads that we did, and I think if anything, just being in the room for those and hearing other people's ideas also was very fruitful for me in terms of understanding how I can kind of sharpen my sword for my own ideas.
That is so cool, man, and it's crazy to see how I think you may get this in this a little bit later, but how you're kind of working on those soccer campaigns for the sports ad, and then fast forward to 2023, 2024, you have Damian Lillard on the commercial for every Hulu commercial, just printing out money. Hulu has live sports, so that is pretty cool. I want to jump into your time after Hulu. From my understanding, you're there for about 2 years now, and then you went over to Refinery 29 and CBS Interactive. What was that
Yeah.
like, man?
Yeah, it was very, very different. I think going from NBC to Hulu, like it was still a common thread of TV, right? But going to Refinery 29, it was a different type of leap. That's for anyone that's not familiar with it, it's more of a boutique brand, and they're part of Vice now, Vice Media, if you're more familiar with that.
Vice
So
is
working
huge.
within, yeah, working within a more niche audience for that was, I think, so important for me as a marketer, just because not everything that you're going to work on from your day to day is going to be for the entire community and for the entire country, right? Like, not everyone is going to love every show or every type of content or every type of video, right? So, being able to tailor my brand to different brands, smaller brands for Refinery 29, whether it was fashion brands or beauty brands, I think that that got me a little bit out of my comfort zone and helped me get into the shoes of some of the other advertisers that are really out there.
Why'd you make the leap from Hulu to Refinery 29? Because most people like is usually their dream company, right? Such a big media
Yeah.
brand, especially post Disney acquisition. What made you make that leap?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think that people have told me, for not even necessarily for my career, but for my life, that, you should always try to surround yourself with good people. And there were a lot of good
Hmm.
people at Hulu for sure. But at the time at Refinery 29, one of my closest friends from earlier in my career was starting a new team at Refinery 29. And for
Oh,
one, she
cool.
said that I could, really sculpt it to be what I wanted it to be in terms of my experience at Refinery. But also, too, I would get to work with her again. So, I think that that was a big thing, when you're working on things, whether it's early in the morning or late at night, and you're working with people that you know, love, and respect, then the work is a little bit easier to do.
Yeah, I've seen that a lot too. Like a lot of people moving to former like friends or colleagues or managers that they previously worked with, right? Like I've seen people jump from different companies, like at Cloud. I've seen people recruit go to AWS because their manager was there, and it's good to know it's also similar in the entertainment industry, in the media industry, where hey, I worked with these people, I know the work they do, I want them to go on board, and then similar to us, like our friend Chad. I bring him up because like that's like a lot of the I've seen like kind of how it works in media where he worked on a certain film and then the director liked him so he kind of did another film, right? So it's cool that we have that through all industries, through tech, through media, through entertainment, that as long as you have great relationships with great people, they're more than happy to bring you along with any endeavor that they're kind of starting. So that being said, everyone work really hard in every job you have or every role you have, and it will pay dividends. It may not be kind of today, but later on you'll see that people will like, hey, I really like the work you did, come on board with us. um, Super cool with your work at Refinery 29. You moved over to another huge corporation, CBS Interactive. Everyone knows CBS. Why did you move over to CBS, and what was that like working there?
Yeah, I think that being at CBS, it was going to allow me to work on big brands again. I learned so much at Refinery, and I'll always have a huge place in my heart for the team that I worked with there. But going back into CBS and working on Entertainment Tonight, that was the main draw for me at the time.
Oh, wow.
When they reached out to
Congrats.
me, they said, "Yeah, thank you." It was one of a few different shows that I got to work on there, and being able to speak and think in a linear way there too was something that I hadn't really done before. I'd done a lot of streaming at Hulu, and I guess I kind of dabbled in linear at NBC, but not really. So for CBS, I got to really truly work in traditional TV for a little while. And admittedly, it was during COVID time, so I didn't get to be
Yeah.
on set too much. But working within integrations, and it was an integrated marketing job, was
Yeah, yeah.
very much a new type of job for me. So in the way that I was working with brands at Refinery or even at Hulu, it was a little bit transactional. But for CBS, I really was a creative partner to any of these brands. So whether that was, Hershey trying to do a recipe within Entertainment Tonight, or within Rachel Ray, for example, that was another
Rich
show that I
Ratio,
worked
yeah.
on. It was always a new day. So being able to do that and kind of think differently about marketing products that I didn't really always feel like felt within the show, I think it helped me grow a lot.
That's pretty cool. I didn't know you got to work with Rachel Ray and with Entertainment Tonight. I think you mentioned you're also working on the Drew Barrymore show and help with that Paramount Plus transition. What was that
Yeah,
like?
yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So the Paramount Plus transition was something that started a little bit later in my time at CBS. So when I started, I was working on what the predecessor was called CBS All Access. And
Yeah, CBS All
I think
Access. I
once
remember
we
that.
Yeah, yeah. So once we heard that we were going to be making a bigger splash during that time, it was, as you could guess, very much an all hands on deck situation, and everyone was just trying to pitch in and help as best as we could. So whether that was working on, new messaging, there were a ton of meetings on, even the shade of blue or how the mountain was going to look for some things.
Yep.
It was really great to see that and watch it grow, just because that started as a meeting between two people, just like you and me here, and that's grown into what it is today.
That's so crazy. And I remember during COVID times where all companies were kind of all hands on deck to transition to
Hmm.
streaming because they knew all the viewers were at home. And if we were first to market or first to get all of our shows onto the streaming platforms, it would be a brand new source of revenue for everyone. So I remember like Disney Plus, HBO Max, Paramount Plus, and kind of like Hulu and all these streaming platforms coming on board. So it's really cool how you were in the forefront and the crux of everything during that epic transition for the streaming kind that we're facing today.
Yeah, for sure.
Um,
It's a new day every day for sure in the streaming world. So that definitely gets us all up, I think, from day to day.
did your work at Hulu previously kind of help with the CBS type of the CBS role you had?
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess I didn't really touch on it too much for my first Hulu stint, but when I was working at Hulu for the first time, the advertisers I was working with were mostly small brands. I was a local sales planner, so
Oh,
ones that had maybe
really?
smaller budgets or didn't have national buys. So whether that was, working on a brand that only had XYZ number of money to spend in just Sacramento or just in Tucson, things like that. So I wasn't working on, billion-dollar Toyota buys, and because of that, you had to be a little bit gritty about how you're approaching your media
Mm-hmm.
plans for that. And that absolutely helped with CBS. So, brands would come in, and because, to get into a show, it's not cheap, they didn't really have
Yeah.
much left over to, innovate with. So we kind of had to come up with it ourselves. So whether that was, spending lunches or dinners to just think about how, we could incorporate a candy bar into a scene,
Oh,
or
wow.
a drink into a dinner. It was something that you really had to think of out of the box for. So I got to leverage a lot of my skills there.
Can you talk about that, Drew? I've always been so curious about that because there's so many. Like I'm watching How I Met Your Mother right now. I'm watching so many kind of shows, and I'm
Yeah.
seeing brands integrate that drink or like candy bar in certain scenes. How does that work? And then how does the revenue come from? Yeah, what revenue you guys bring in from that?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think that it's going to be a different model across a lot of different brands, and I think a lot of different studios. Like I know that CBS does it differently from NBC versus how we do it here at Hulu versus I'm sure how they do it like at like MTV or BET.
Mm-hmm.
But ultimately, it's usually a flat fee, whatever that fee is that the advertiser pays to the publisher. So this would be CBS in this instance. And at that point, it's kind of just on the publisher to figure it out, right? Like, let's say we want to put Angelo's Pizza in a show, right?
Mm-hmm.
So at that point, it would have been on me to figure out, hey, I've got 50 scripts for 4 shows coming in. Um, what show is going to have a pizza in it, And like, what show will it not be? What show will it not make sense to have a pizza in it? Like, for example, we would never put Angelo's Pizza in Star Trek, right? Because they wouldn't be
Yeah,
eating pizza in that show.
pizza's on the
But
spaceship.
for yeah, but for the Drew Barrymore show or for Entertainment Tonight at the time, it was super feasible to think, oh, well, one of the hosts wants to go to Angelo's Pizza on Fifth Avenue in Sacramento. Let's just send him there. He'll do an interview with Angelo, and we'll call it a day from there.
Oh wow, that is so fascinating. I've always been curious how that works. Thank you so much for kind of clarifying that. It's cool how you guys
Yeah,
integrate with each scene, each script, and it's kind of like a big thing when advertisers and your company work does that. Pretty cool.
yeah.
Um, let's go in now to your experience where you're here. Currently, it's almost been 3 years now at Hulu, and you started as a live licensed marketing manager all the way to a team lead for licensed marketing. Can you talk about transitioning back to Hulu, what that was like when you kind of left CBS and went back to Hulu?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think to continue the theme from earlier, it's all about going to people that you know and love and respect. And I didn't work with the boss that I ultimately ended up getting previously at Hulu, but she worked with a very dear friend of mine, and he said, like, hey, this woman is amazing, and I respect her a lot, and she also has a position open that I think that you might be a good fit for. And at the end of the day, it really came down to a cold LinkedIn message. So I just want to shout out that that actually works. I sent her
Oh,
a note and
really?
she responded to me, and the rest was history. We ended up working together for a couple of years. So yeah, that's ultimately why I went. I think that I knew Hulu as we knew from before, but also I trusted my friend and advisor so much to vouch for this person, and he ended up being right.
That's so cool. What was Hulu like post Disney acquisition? Because you're there prior to Disney. What's it like being a part of the Disney family now?
Yeah, for sure. I think that there's a lot of different textures and nuances to the new Hulu, and I think that we get a lot of the benefits of being part of Disney, and that, we can flex a lot of synergistic things. So whether that's talking to our friends at ABC or talking to our friends within Freeform, formerly ABC Family, all of us are related now. So being able to come up with campaigns that really span such a huge library of content, whether that's theme parks or shows or movies or podcasts, that's unlike anything I think I've ever worked on before. I think the flip of that too is that we have to be a little bit more buttoned up now than we were previously. So
Oh, so
having
interesting.
everything down pat in terms of all the details and understanding how to justify whether it's our spending or a marketing event that we want to do. There's a lot of reporting that we need to do. So I think that that's the reason why Disney has been around as long as we have. So having the receipts ready is very important.
That's so fascinating and interesting. I totally I totally feel you when you have to kind of be more buttoned up. Kind of when I was working at Google X, which was a subsidiary of Alphabet, I knew that you had to be more buttoned up, even though you were a startup. You had to kind of have all your finances and your ducks in a row if you were going to go present to a board or present to a certain group of people. And I'm starting to see that with Hulu and Disney. With regards to your job, you're a live licensed marketing manager. This was kind of like your first role once you get back. What did you do for that role for our audience who are curious and like what that role is like?
Yeah, for sure. So I worked with a number of different partners, and I would say that the live part of my title was really just the title. I wasn't really working with live too much. So
Hmm.
I was working mostly with our network partners, and that is still true from day to day. I work with everyone in the family that I was talking about. So like your ABCs, your Freeforms of the world. I would work with FX as well, and a lot of it is just about understanding what shows are coming from them, right? So for me, I don't work on originals from day to day. So like I wouldn't be working on Handmaid's Tale, for
Yeah.
example. But for me, since I work with ABC, FX, Freeform, whatever, I'll work on the Hulu aspect of the marketing campaign for Abbott Elementary or for
Oh,
The
wow.
Bear or for Welcome to Wrexham, things like that. So that was pretty much my entire day today. So talking to the partners and then talking to the internal guys. So if you were to see a cool Instagram post come up, or if you were to log into Hulu today and see Abbott Elementary on the main spotlight page, that would have worked with my team and a couple of others.
That is so cool, man. And I see a ton of Abbott Elementary. So it's good to know you're the guy and you're the team behind that. That's awesome, man. With,
Yeah. I working with the ABC guys is wild, and we are very much you know, a partnership with them. The ABC guys drive a lot of the strategy, but I think that, and
uh-huh.
I'm sure you can see it too, the Hulu aspect is a little bit different from the ABC aspect.
Yeah, it's definitely a little different. You guys are kind of like that creative, fun, and kind of. And I really enjoy it. It catches my eye. It's very great marketing, to be quite frank with you.
Great.
With regards to that role, you did such a good job that you're promoted to team lead. How did you get promoted, and kind of what advice do you have for our audience who want to get promoted and move up in that marketing kind of ladder in corporate?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think that this is true for a lot of different jobs, but within marketing in particular, I think that it's important just to stay curious, you know? So, whether that's being curious about new content types, whether that's being curious about even just new shows, right? Like part of the job at Hulu is understanding old shows that are coming in and
Hmm.
being able to speak to them, whether that's like we worked on, New Girl last year,
New
which
Girl's
was
huge.
which yeah, which was coming to Hulu, which had ended like many, many years before,
Yeah,
but people love that show. So being curious about that type of show and that type of content, and because I didn't watch New Girl during its first run, I think it really helped me set myself apart when it came to speaking intelligently in meetings about it. So being able to speak to and it's such a joy to be able to talk about show in jokes in meetings, but being able to talk about
that's cool.
tongue-in-cheek references about shows that'll set you apart when it comes to TV marketing for sure.
Why do companies choose to bring back like New Girl or certain shows? Is it like how do you decide that?
Yeah, and like I guess to be clear for this one too, like we didn't bring New Girl like to new seasons. It was more just about taking it from Netflix and having it here on Hulu
Hmm.
and publicizing it that way. But I think that a lot of it is really just because people love shows like that, and when you see an opportunity like that where maybe they're looking to finish their contract at Netflix or at another streaming service and they want to have a new exclusive home, um, it's an opportunity to bring it to a service like ours, and we're happy that we took advantage of that opportunity, and I think that New Girl is something that people know and love for sure.
That is so cool, man. And I guarantee you're thriving now. You're doing super well at Hulu. So thank you so much kind of talking about that and your journey there. What advice do
Yeah,
you have for our audience who really want to get into marketing and kind of basically emulate the career you've created for yourself?
yeah, for sure. I think that the most important thing, even outside of TV marketing, but for marketing in general, is to keep learning. I think that to market something in even 2020 versus 2024 is very, very different. Like there are all new sorts of platforms that you can use. Like, for example, like when we were leaving college, TikTok wasn't a thing at all. And now it's a huge part of a lot of marketing campaigns. So being able to stay relevant and speak to the trends that are happening will serve you really well, whether it's here at Hulu, whether you're working on marketing at Target, or if you're working on marketing at Nike, whatever it is, you'll always want to be in touch with the zeitgeist from day to day and what people are talking about so that you can hopefully try and weave it into what you're working on too.
That's pretty cool. Yeah, you gotta stay relevant. You kind of stay up with the trends and weave into that zeitgeist we have today. Yeah, and TikTok is huge now. I know at UCLA, we're all making TikToks to see people on Bruin Walk kind of recording videos, and there's a lot of TikTokers on campus. That kind of transitions actually to my next question. You're very successful in marketing. You're very successful in your career already. What made you go back to UCLA and pursue an MBA? Most people they're doing well. They just want to stay within that and just keep growing in their current role. But you decide to go back. What made you do that?
Yeah, I think that a lot of it was, to use a Fembassador term, is just acceleration for me. I don't think I went into UCLA thinking that I wanted to pivot into anything else. Like there are people that, and we know the same people, you know who I'm talking about, that are looking to
Hmm.
switch to consulting or iBanking, whatever it is.
Yeah,
I knew that I wanted to stay in marketing. I knew that I wanted to stay in entertainment, but I do think that having an MBA will help me go on and be the best that I can be, whether it's in my current role now or whether it's when I'm CMO Drew in 5, 10, 15 years,
I
whatever it
love
is.
it.
So learning that and being in the classes that we are in together, I think has given me a real platform to understand marketing at its core a little bit more. But also having been in the industry and having been in the workforce for a little bit, I can apply a lot of the things that we learned in the textbook to my actual day-to-day work. So it's a great marriage of all the different parts of me.
That's pretty cool. I love how you're shooting for the stars, CMO Drew. I know it's not far away. I know you have the ambition, you have the drive, you have the great personality, you have everything needed to kind of become that next version of yourself. And it's so cool you're actually being able to apply a lot of what we did in class to the actual workforce. Ben, who I interviewed last week, as well as Yuna and Tiff, they're all mentioning how a lot of the finance content, a lot of the business content they're able to apply it to their day at work because they're so technically skilled. However, they want to learn more business and finance, and they're able to apply that to their current roles or current jobs. And it's good that you're able to do the same with your roles. So I appreciate
Yeah.
that, Drew. We're on to the last and final question of the podcast. And I always ask all of our listeners this, or all of our guests this question. What is one piece of advice you would give to your younger self?
I would say to ask more questions. And that is not even necessarily only true for work, but for life too. I think that I have always tried to be as prepared and buttoned up for things, whether that's school or for work. And that's great. But I think it's so important to understand that we don't know everything, also, right? And there are always going to be people that are more knowledgeable or more experienced about things that we're working on from day to day. So, taking advantage of the knowledge and experiences that other people have with me, I think is something that is so important. And I think I've become a little bit more confident about doing that more recently, whether it's talking to mentors or people that I don't even really know very well. But I think when I was younger, I was a little bit more shy about asking people about, hey, how did you get to where you are now, or what
Yeah.
would you do in this situation? So getting advice like that from people that you respect, I think will always serve you well.
And I appreciate that, man. I appreciate you coming on the pod and helping other people who probably would want to ask you this question. How can I get to where you are today? What would you do in this situation? And by you coming on, there's probably someone in college, in undergrad, in high school, or just trying to figure their life out. And you're here to help answer that question because they have a passion for marketing. They have a passion for going to business school. They have a passion for really pursuing their dreams. And I appreciate you coming on board and taking the time to answer these questions. So, Drew. So I really just want to say thank you from the bottom of my heart, my friend. I appreciate that.
Yeah, of course, man. It's a huge pleasure, and wishing everyone else listening big luck.
Yeah, of course, of course. So we're gonna include Drew's LinkedIn in the bio below of the YouTube video. If you guys want to reach out, feel free to message Drew. One of the nicest, kindest guys you'll ever meet, and also one of the smartest people you'll ever meet too. He'll give some great advice, and it's just a pleasure to be around. So feel free to reach out to Drew. We have his link in the description below. But Drew, my friend, I appreciate you so much. Thank you for coming on the pod. Um, with that being said, Jello family, please like, comment, subscribe. We'll be posting this and a whole bunch of shorts and reels so you guys have kind of information on the podcast, on Drew. And appreciate you guys always watching. The podcast is growing so fast, and it's been an amazing journey so far. So thank you so much. Drew, my brother, thank you so much. And I appreciate you. Have an amazing day, my friend.
Thanks, Ange. Catch you soon.
All right. Peace, guys.